Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. I'm your host, Mike Solitro, and today we have a very, very special episode. Our guest is Christopher Solitro. He is the Executive Director of Sales and Operations at Marchon Partners, and more importantly, he's my brother. Chris, welcome. We are very excited and thrilled that this interview is finally happening.
Thank you. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Excellent. Good to hear. So I'm guessing when you meet people, you probably are not going on the introduction that you're my brother. You go with the first part of that. What do you tell them you do, and what exactly do you do?
Yeah. So whenever I introduce myself to anybody, I always let them know, my name's Christopher Solitro. I'm the Executive Director of Sales and Operations at Marchon Partners. And what we do is we're a technology consulting and staffing firm. So basically, any type of technology projects that a company may have, any staffing needs they may have, whether it be contract to permanent, any of those type of engagements, that's where we come into play. And it's usually centered around the technology world. We've dabbled in finance, accounting, administration, that type of work, but I would say technology is about 80 to 90% of the work that we do. And that spans all of technology, whether it be infrastructure, application development, cloud, security, all of the above. And we've helped clients as small as startups to as big as the Fortune 500s. And we just really like to get to know our clients, partner with them, figure out where their pain points are. And the thing I really enjoy about my company is that we're the perfect size where we're large enough to handle any problems that they have, but we're also small enough where we're extremely flexible. We don't have a one size fits all mold. We don't have hey, this is our only type of client we work with, and this is what we can offer. Again, we just like to figure out what the problem is and what's the best solution and go from there.
Thank you. That is a very thorough explanation. The first thing I was going to ask you as a follow-up was to define the technology piece for some of us who are outside of those fields. But you did a great job there, as well as talking about the size of your clients, as well as the solutions you provide for them. So that goes into that second thing you mentioned, the consulting piece. It seems
Yep.
like you are their outsourced problem solver when it comes to staffing.
Correct. Yeah. So whether it be staffing or whether it just be a project that they don't know how to handle, they don't know either how many people they need, or do they want contractors? Do they want permanent? We really just dig in to what is the problem, how long of a problem has this been, how long is the solution going to take to solve it, and basically what their roadmap looks like for the next couple of years, because then that can determine, okay, I actually do need a permanent hire. I can sustain them for the next few years and then see what comes up after that. Or it's, hey, we have an upgrade, we have a configuration we need to do, we're implementing something new. That lends itself to, hey, let's bring on a consultant that is, an expert in this area. Let's get it implemented. And then from there, do we want the support and administration to be done by a whole separate person or a whole separate team that is also contractors? Or do we want it done by a permanent team because that's more ongoing work? So it's nice to just be able to offer all of these solutions and not need to pigeonhole ourselves in terms of, well, this is what we offer, so this is what I'm going to give you. I've worked at places like that before, and that's frustrating as a salesperson. So to be able to have that flexibility is key not only for us but for the client as well.
Yeah, that one size fits all very rarely works for anyone. So I'm glad you've highlighted that there. How often, when your clients reach out to you, will they? I'm sure they know that something is wrong or they need something. Are they aware of what those needs are, of whether it is number of staff, if you're managing their project, to know what the deliverables will be? Is that where your experience comes in, or what does that look like?
I'd say about 75% of the time they know what they need. They are the experts within technology. I am fairly technical, but can I code? No, I don't know how to code. I can't get into the weeds of exactly what needs to be done if you're creating an application. However, I know the workflows, I know the skill sets that can get the job done. I have an idea of how long usually these types of projects take. So I'd say when clients come to me and they don't really know what's going on in terms of exactly what they need, it's usually, hey, Chris, I have 200 grand. We're implementing this new thing. How many people do you think it would take to get it done, and how long do you think you can do it in? That's where we rely on not only myself, but we have consultants on staff that have been on staff for a long time in many different skill sets, and we can utilize their expertise to kind of help us put those bids together, put the plan together. And sometimes we're competing against other companies to see what that model is going to look like, what the pricing looks like, so on and so forth. But I'd say 75% of the time, the client comes, they're like, hey, this is what we need. I have budget for 6 months to get it done. This is the rate that we can pay you. Can you find somebody within these parameters? And we go off of that. There's more details that go involved in terms of who that right fit is. But once you have that bit of information, you can pretty much figure out everything else.
Okay, and that makes sense. So seeing as that your clients are the companies in the tech space looking to either manage these projects, bring on new staff, are the project managers or the people you're filling these roles with, are they also your clients? Do you know them already? Are you then kind of putting a requisition out to hire them? How do you fill those needs once it's identified what they need?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, great question. So it's both. We have clients that we've worked with for years that come back to us and know us well, and it could be a requirement that we've seen before, or it could be a brand new problem. Also, we're in sales. As salespeople, you go find new clients. I run our sales team, and that's one of our main things is to make sure that we're constantly bringing in new clients. Because one thing that I've learned in the staffing world, your top client this year is most likely not your top client next year because they have all their funding this year to get all their projects and get it up and running. You take care of that for them. Odds of them having that same volume next year is pretty slim. So that's why you have to always continue to fill that funnel with new clients. So basically, the way the workflow works is I will engage with the hiring manager, or somebody on my team will engage with the hiring manager. That can be as low level as a project manager, a team lead, manager level, director level, and it can be as high as the CTO, the CIO, or the CEO. It just really depends on where our relationship starts. Usually it's starting at the C level or VP level, and those are usually not the people doing the hiring. So then you get introduced to their, people that are under them, and just kind of talk to the organization to get input on, what exactly is the problem, who's that right fit, who's the right culture fit and technology fit in terms of the skill set. I get all that information. Sometimes they'll have a requisition already written up. Sometimes they won't. Some of my best clients, they say, Chris, I need another Susan or whoever it is that, we've already placed. Or Chris, I need another desktop support person. You know what our environment looks like. Go get us one. And those are usually the best ones. It's interesting because in the recruiting world, you want as much detail as possible because you're going to put it together a requisition. Sometimes they'll already have it. You'll be posting it on LinkedIn to see if we can get people that apply. We'll be cold reaching out to candidates. I wouldn't call it super cold because usually these candidates want to hear from us. We can see on LinkedIn if they're looking for a new job, if they're on the job boards like Monster, Career Builder, Dice. Why would they be there if they didn't want calls? So a lot of these times when we're reaching out to candidates, it's a warmer call and easier to handle. And really, you want to qualify them not to the job, but to the person, because you want to get to know who is this candidate, what is their skill set, and not really pigeonhole them to that one requirement you're calling about, because they could be good for something that comes up a week down the road. And even though they don't fit this, you want to get an idea of what their total skill set is. And the best recruiters that I've worked with, they build those relationships and they get to know those candidates. And they don't just, hey, you're not a fit for this, we'll see you later. It's okay, you're not a fit for this, but I'm going to stay in touch. We're going to keep a relationship. I'm going to give you a call, let you know what the market looks like. And then if something comes up that fits your skills, we'll get back in touch. And those people that you build a relationship with are usually the best ones. And they also refer you to their friends, people that aren't on these job boards, people that you can't really get anywhere else. So it's really a recruiting mentality to get to know the person, get to know the market that's out there, whether it be within a certain location or just nationally, especially nowadays with so many companies that are hiring remote, hiring national. You really want to build your bucket of solid candidates so that you have a base to go to when you get additional requirements in a similar skill. So we find those right people, submit them to the clients, set up interviews, pick the best person, get them onboarded. They're usually our W-2 employees. We also work on a corp to corp basis as well, because there's candidates that like to be their own individual corporation. We have additional sponsor companies that sponsor visas, and then we work with them on a corp to corp basis as well. So there's a lot of different models that you can work on that end when it comes to us actually employing said contractor. But in general, that's the workflow from first meeting with client to actually placing somebody.
So I'm glad that you brought up the relationship piece because I think a lot of times, not even in just recruiting and sales, that you hit a this is not the fit for this, and people move on when they kind of overlook this could be a long-term solution for a different problem, and that building a relationship is important. So I'm really glad you highlighted that. I took down a bunch of notes because I want to ask you a lot of follow-ups because I could
Sure.
talk to you all day about this. I will not. I will stay on point. Um, we'll talk about the market definitely, but you mentioned hiring and getting to know their background, what they're looking for, what you're looking for. Are there any mistakes that you see in hiring in general today that you try to avoid or that you've learned from directly?
Yeah, there's a few things. One, looking for that absolute perfect person. 9 times out of 10, the perfect person doesn't exist. We'll get requisitions of here's the 10 things they need to have. Let's go. Okay, great. How long has this been open? 7 months. Okay. So have you found that perfect person in 7 months? No. So let's boil it down. What are those top three things they absolutely need to have? What are those couple additional things have that would really put this person over the top? And what are some things that you can probably live without because someone else on the team has that skill? It's not something you're going to do for about a year or so. There's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't need certain skills. But when you first talk to a client, especially if it's your first opportunity with them, hey, here's my laundry list. Go find me that perfect person that doesn't exist. Okay, let's whittle it back. And when you're younger in this job, okay, sure, I'll go do it. I'll go find you somebody. You don't want to turn it down, and B, you don't want to give that pushback. However, as you've been doing this for longer and kind of know the market and know different people's skills, you can really have a more intelligent conversation with said hiring manager and just boil it down to what do you really need. We will find somebody that has that, especially and hopefully some of these additional skills, and let's get this accomplished. Another trap or mistake that I see clients make all the time is just taking too long and having too many cooks in the kitchen. It's okay. They're going to meet with these 5 people. It's going to be 5 rounds. The interview process is going to take 3 to 4 weeks, and then we'll make a decision based off of the 30 people we talk to. That's great and all, but odds of any good candidate making it through that entire process is slim to none, and you lose really good people. My best clients will work fast. They'll get it done in no more than 3 rounds. And it can vary whether if it's a contract position or if it's a permanent position. If it's a permanent position, we understand that you want to maybe vet them a little bit more, and we get that. However, the longer it takes, the more frustrated candidates get, regardless of people getting laid off, of the market maybe slightly turning. The market was so good last year. It still is good, and it still is a candidate's market. So when we go to offer somebody a job, they probably have 2 or 3 other offers on the table as well. Or when they're in the interview activity, they still have a lot going on with other clients that they're interviewing with. So those are usually the two biggest mistakes: is waiting for that perfect person, or just taking well too long, whether it be too long of an interview process or too many people that you have to talk to get sign off on. And then you just can't make a decision and you're stuck. And then your requisitions go unfilled for months on end. And you're just unfortunately wasting everyone's time, including your own. So I'd say those are the two biggest things where clients fall in a trap.
Those are good answers. So thank you for that. If you could, with that in mind, are there any, as you talk about through that, any war stories, any, I can't believe this happened, of course, leaving names and details out that come to mind? You're like, I can't believe I did this, or I saw this actually happen.
Uh, it's funny because honestly, this happens on a week to week basis. I'll keep it general, but, I have a client right now that they offered the job to this person 2 weeks ago. I think it'll be 2 weeks on Thursday, and they still haven't got him the offer letter. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, I understand that there's process. I understand that you have to get them in your system and you have to get the sign offs on salary and all that other stuff. But these are the type of things that absolutely kill deals because I think we both know the recruiting and staffing industry in general doesn't have the best reputation. So when I'm constantly going to a candidate, oh no, it's okay, your job is there, you're going to have it. They're looking at me like, you're crazy. I have no paperwork. Like, what are you talking about? And it's hard to be that messenger when delays are just constantly going on. Things may change. We may get different updates, and that we try to establish as much credibility as we can as an advocate for our client. But with these type of situations that come on, you just inherently lose credibility because the expectation that was set for you unfortunately changes. Now you have to change the expectation of the candidate. And now they're thinking like, okay, I've worked with other shisty staffing firms. Are you pulling a fast one on me? Did I even have this offer? And stuff like that. So it's sometimes tough to navigate those things when it's not your fault and things are constantly changing. But I've always found, just be upfront, be transparent, let people know where they stand. Don't hold information because usually that doesn't go over very well, and it usually all comes out anyways. So yeah, I won't get into too many specifics of war stories when it comes to that sort of stuff, but it unfortunately it happens all the time, and we're constantly battling. Okay, how can we solve this problem now? Unforeseen and no fault of our own.
Now that's that you're right about that, and I think your advice on being transparent, keeping those lines of communication open, and ideally closing those time gaps when possible is probably best practices given the scenario that you laid out. You mentioned
Yep.
that it is still a candidates market, which we hear all different types of news headlines about what's happening job with jobs in different sectors, different kind of locations in the country. What is the current market, and how are you counseling both your clients as well as the staff that you're helping them find, as far as what expectations should be, besides not finding that perfect person, and how these candidates can kind of put the best foot forward so they're not stuck in a 3 week wait and see?
Yeah, no, good question. So the current market is very interesting. As I mentioned, last year was crazy. Everybody was hiring. Everybody was bringing on permanent staff. Contracting always stays fairly consistent, so that was still there. And literally every time we'd go to offer a candidate, they would have five other offers, and that was just the reality. Now it's still good. It's just slightly different. So on the permanent side, especially within the startup world, we've seen that has decreased in terms of hiring. We have some clients that literally just outsource their hiring to us when it comes to permanent hires, and that we've definitely seen a decrease on that side of the house. On the contract side have stayed consistent, because even though you hear about all these layoffs that are going on, people getting rid of permanent staff, a lot of the projects and a lot of the deliverables, they're still there. So how are you going to do that? You augment with contract staff. You don't know what you don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months, a year from now. So, okay, let's bring somebody on for 6 months, assess at that point, and then make a determination then. Do we want to extend this person? Do we want to bring them on permanent? Or have things got worse, and do we want to lay them off? Um, it's a little bit frustrating with LinkedIn and the news, because really all you hear is big tech layoff, another 10,000 gone, another 8,000 gone, 5,000 gone. And that's obviously happening, but they don't really explain why. Last 2 years, so many companies terribly overhired. There was a war for talent, and they brought on way more people than they were supposed to. A lot of these companies are obviously public. They have shareholders that they need to appease on a quarterly basis. So they make these quick decisions to, whether it be increase profits or decrease costs, just to look better on paper. And that's usually, when it comes to advice, it's, hey, let's continue to think long term, because yes, I understand that there is maybe some turmoil currently. But what we've always found is that our clients that maybe not keep your foot all the way down on the gas, but the clients that keep their foot on the gas, continue to hire in the right spots. Don't just put a blanket freeze on everything just to pause and see what happens. Those are usually the ones that come out on top at the end of the day, whether it be a year, 2 years from now. So it's just interesting to see that. And the other part of it that, gets to be a little frustrating is, again, you see all these headlines of everyone getting laid off. What you don't see is how quickly people are rebounding. Like, especially within the technology space, there are still tons of companies that are hiring. And it might not be the Facebooks, it might not be the Twitters, it might not be these ones that, everyone wants that dream job at these big tech companies. But there are a lot of a lot of mid-market companies that didn't have a chance to get that talent that Facebook and all of them were swallowing up. Now they have a shot at these people, and these people are very quickly rebounding and getting jobs maybe at companies that they hadn't heard of, or just more mid-sized companies that they hadn't worked for in the past. But that is absolutely happening. People aren't staying, especially in the technology fields. Those people are not staying on the market that long. And that's the other thing, is that you only hear that, big tech is laying off, but they don't really specify where those layoffs are happening. There's a lot going on, whether it be, unfortunately, in the talent acquisition area. A lot of the people that I work with, whether it be HR, recruiters, those are usually the first people that get laid off. Then they look at the more, marketing, or unfortunately, like a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was huge over the last couple of years. But as money gets tight, it's like, okay, where can we cut? Some of these newer programs, unfortunately, get cut, and it's like, what was the point of the last couple of years of making these changes when, we're now just getting rid of it all because we need to have a little bit of a better profit? So it's it's frustrating from our end when we see companies that act like that. However, there's plenty on the other side of it that get to reap the benefits of, candidates that are willing to, go to them as well. And that's usually the advice that we give to these candidates is, hey, I know your track record is you worked at Twitter, you worked at Facebook, you worked, Salesforce, wherever it might be. Don't just go for that big name, because the big name is great, and you have plenty of snacks in the kitchen and all that stuff, but there are plenty of other things to look at. And just because you don't recognize the name of said company doesn't mean they're not doing fantastic, and doesn't mean it's not a solid career move and career pivot. So there's a lot just more in depth than just a whole bunch of people getting laid off in the tech space. The tech space is still very healthy. Unemployment is still at a very, still super low, under 3% within technology. And even in some additional sectors within technology, like security, finding security people is extremely difficult. And if anybody's laying off security folks, then they are not very intelligent, because to find those are really hard. And companies are only getting hacked more and more, and that's only going to continue, especially with the Internet of Things and devices going online. Devices are not meant to be secure. Those are super easy to hack into. So there's a lot of different areas in that capacity that, will still be super in demand. So it's interesting when you just look at the market in general, and then you boil it down to the technology market, and then you boil it down even further to some of those more in demand skill sets.
That's a super in-depth and thoughtful answer, because unfortunately a lot of us are only looking at headlines. They only see headlines. They don't A, read the article, or B, as you point out, the why behind it. Even if you do have, the facts or the numbers correct, it's like, well, why is this happening? Well, it makes sense when you plug in the information there. I want to follow up. You mentioned having the companies that do well over a period of time, ones that keep their foot in the gas, that are not just like times are bad, let's get rid of staff. They have that longer vision. In your spot, you must know that sometimes you've got a client who may not be ideal for a certain candidate. How can you communicate that to a candidate, if you can, to say, this is an opening we have, but last time the market fluctuated, they get rid of all their people, so you may not want this job. Is that something that how do you kind of balance that from servicing your client to working with these candidates who you're building that relationship, you're building that rapport for kind of on the long term?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And honestly, that conversation happens regardless of what the market looks like, especially since we're dealing with a lot of contract openings, because we're not just calling people that are career contractors. A lot of the people we're talking to are in permanent positions. So if I'm talking to somebody that's been in a permanent position for 10 years, they're just bored. They're looking for their next role. Their company's not doing anything, spicy from a technology perspective. And they're like, I need to leave in order to get better experience somewhere else. If I know that I have a position that, the client's like, hey, this might only be 3 months. It could go a year, 2 years, but odds are it's likely 3 to 6 months. I'm going to advise that person. I know this is a good move when it comes to you getting exposure to this technology. However, it's probably not the right move for you. You're in a permanent position. You have a family. You said you need benefits. Granted, we offer benefits, but still, it probably doesn't compare to someone that's been 10 years at a certain company. We like to just figure out what is the person's drivers. And if that person is like, hey, I'm set, I've saved. If this ends in 3 months, okay, I'll just go find something else. I know my skill set's in demand. You have to have that back and forth conversation, because you need to understand, what is important to this candidate. Is it money? Is it the opportunity to work with certain technologies? Is it the opportunity to work in a certain industry or with a certain client? All that really depends. And that's when you really understand when to push, when not to push, when to advise them to go somewhere, when to advise them not to go somewhere. It's really just digging down to the candidate. And again, that comes with the relationship model. If you're doing things transactionally, you probably don't even care. You're just like, okay, great, you fit. Let's send you and see what happens. Oh, you got cut 3 months from now. Okay, sorry. That's what happens when it comes to contracting. It's a chance. Again, the industry can have a bad rep because there are companies and ones that do that. However, when you actually take the time to get to know people, to figure out what is their drivers, what are they really looking for, then you know how to make the right match. You know how to share the information that is relevant to them and that that they want to know. And then you go from there in terms of what makes sense. Should we go for this job? Should we not go for this job? So it's really dependent on the person.
That's really helpful to hear you say that, because as you talk about being transparent, having the ability to keep an eye on the long term and run a company that's based on relationships, that answer really embodies that. We can't just put people in roles and then hope it works for the best. We need to be upfront on both ends. And I think that's a fantastic way to kind of describe that. Say, look, somehow we're already at time. I've got two questions I need to ask you, so I'm going to get them in.
Go ahead.
Feel free to answer them as you see fit. The first, you mentioned working with startups in the tech space, and you kind of joke about the snacks in the kitchen, that the perks we read about. What are good startups or startups that are pushing past that level and becoming viable companies? What do they have in common, or what are you seeing ingredients for a company that starts there and makes it?
I'd say the first word that came to mind was flexible. You there's a lot of companies that are super rigid, that are just like, hey, we need these guys on site 5 days a week, no questions asked. Great, your positions are probably not going to get filled, especially within technology. Like this last 2.5, 3 years have been a case study of how productive you can be at home, and especially within the technology world. I do understand that there is innovation, team meetings, that camaraderie that is lost when you are remote. However, there are ways to do it where you still have that. You can require 2 days a week on site, or you can require, hey, you're going to be a remote person, but once a month we're going to come on site and have 3 days, and we're going to do that. Or however you integrate on like this with virtual type meetings. Like some virtual meetings are, they get overwhelming and people don't want to do them. However, you can do them in a right way at a right frequency that just makes people feel like they're a part of something, as opposed to just being at home doing nothing. So I would say the ones that are flexible in terms of what their arrangement is, in terms of, do I have to come on site? Do I not come on site? How often are we meeting virtually? What are these meetings about? Is it, you always hear the same, this could have been an email. And there's plenty of companies that do all meetings when it just could have been an email. So it's really just finding that right balance of creating a solid experience for employees. Because especially when you're going through an in-depth interview process, these people probably know what they're doing. They will have other opportunities that are full remote. And you just have to understand that the only way to build a solid team is to be flexible, offer what is interesting to that person. There are some people that love to go on site and they want to be on site. So I'm not telling clients to get rid of your office space, like, absolutely not. Beyond that, people like to work with the latest and greatest technology. People like to work with, stuff that might hit the market and then be like, yeah, I created that. I know we're coming tight on time, but I always tell this story of, literally, my first client was Motorola. Motorola was the first one that I was ever working with. And every meeting I went on, they were like, oh, this is so awesome. We're working on this new 3-screen technology. Soon you're going to be able to watch TV on your phone, on your computer, and on your TV. Just wait till it comes out. And I was like, oh man, that's going to be great. And then we actually place developers, and then it actually comes out. And it's just really cool to see that, hey, certain developer, you were part of making this, and now everybody use this. And it's, those little things people find exciting. And, at the time they were using cutting edge technology and working on something that everyone was going to see. And yeah, so beyond the flexibility, also having something exciting that can really, get people up in the morning.
Those are both good things to have. You paint that picture well. Second question. Let's be a little quicker here if you can. For
Sorry.
the candidates, no, don't worry. For the candidates on the other side of the equation, what can they do to put their best foot forward? Which things should they have? Are cover letters still important? Should they have their own website if they're in technology? What things are you looking for that kind of separates the best from an average candidate?
Cover letters I don't feel like are as important. I could be wrong there. That could be my bias, but I've never been a fan of cover letters, nor have I ever needed them when working with clients. And that's because we do represent our people and we give our own little blurb of why this person is a fit. So I think just really, if you're working with a recruiter, really highlighting your strengths and your accomplishments, and then teaming with them on how to really highlight those based off of what the need is. That really does go a long way. Don't be jumpy. It's if candidates are having 6 months here, 3 months here, a year here, be aware of that. And if you're aware of that, like, okay, my next role, maybe it should be a permanent role, or maybe it should be a longer term contract. I have to show stability, because that is feedback that I do get for a lot of candidates. Even if it is just a contract job that's 6 months, it's like, oh, this person's too jumpy. They've worked only 6 months everywhere else. Like, well, your job 6 months as well. So these are the type of jobs that they've got. So it's kind of that back and forth. But being able to show some type of longevity at a company definitely goes a long way. And just really being able to connect on an interview. A lot of people in IT are introverted, are quiet. They're not the best at selling themselves. And, we have to coach them in terms of, hey, you're really soft spoken and you give short answers. Let's work on that. Practice talking on, leave yourself a message, do a video of yourself, hear yourself talk. You're going to find that you're hard to understand. And even though you're a fantastic candidate, look great on paper, if you can't connect with somebody in that interview, they're not going to hire you, because unfortunately that goes way longer than my resume looked good. So being able to take that feedback, implement it, definitely helps job seekers.
Those are a good piece of advice. We have covered, I feel like, a good amount of ground today. Is there anything, Chris, I didn't ask you that I probably should have?
No, I mean, I just the one thing that I do say when it comes to the staffing and consulting industry is I always call it a gift and a curse, because there's a lot of us out there, and a lot of them do the job very poorly, and it's very frustrating because when you first reach out to somebody and they're only used to someone that's very transactional, that treats you like a piece of paper, that's how they treat you at first. So it's really tough because you get placed in that bucket as soon as you reach out to someone. However, it's a gift because you can very quickly differentiate yourself and very quickly show, yes, I know this is how you're used to being treated when it comes to working with a recruiter or whatnot, but that's not the experience that we're going to give you. We want to really understand you. And, we have your interest at heart. It's not just about, oh, I need to close this deal next. Like, yes, there's always that aspect of it when it comes to any type of sales role. However, we are in the people business. So you'd be amazed of if you just treat a person like a person and actually care a little bit about them, you are differentiating yourself so much compared to all of your competition. And then those little things, do what you say you're going to do. Follow up with people. Be transparent. It is a gift because unfortunately not many companies are doing that. So when we do, it goes a long way, and candidates appreciate it,
I
and
mean,
clients as well.
I feel like your entire interview discussed things that really talk about treating people well and understanding that this is a people business, not a sales business. So I'm glad that that's a great place to end. And I mean, I talk to folks all the time that unfortunately are in roles that are viewed as commodities, sales, recruiting, real estate. But you're so right when you call it the gift, because it's so easy to get over that low bar that the competition has put out there, that when you do, exactly. Like, wow, this person actually cares. They know what they're doing. So yep. I love that's where you decided to end it. Chris, if anybody wants to reach out to you, find out more about Marchon Partners, where can they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Christopher Solitro. My email address is just my first initial last name, csolitro@marchonpartners.com. And our website is marchonpartners.com as well. And we have an inquiries area. So if anybody needs any type of staffing or project or just technology advice in general, feel free to reach out to us there or to myself directly, and we'd be more than happy to help.
Thank you so much. We will post those links. Chris, you were, if not my first invite, certainly one of my first three. We are nearing episode 150. So thank you for being one of the hardest interviews to recruit. But this was great. Thank you for doing it.
You're welcome. I like to keep you on your toes.